As I was looking at today's, I'm just going through James like we did last Sunday. As I was looking through today's message, I kind of looked down and I went, Mother's Day, how can I, how do you spin this in a Mother's Day way? I looked down, favoritism. And I went, that's probably not something that you want to do on Mother's Day. I was the favorite kid, so usually it's not. If you were in a multiple kid household, there were a few of you. Normally, you don't think to yourself, "I was the favorite," right? You don't ever think that. You think, "Oh, the other one was the favorite." That's your side of the coin, right? You always view things from your side of the coin. And the funny part is that as that was convicting me this week, as I was looking at that, I got accused of favoritism in my classroom by a kid who I've had to get on their case multiple times just because at the beginning of the year, this was such a sweet kid, but the year went on and then this kid became a tyrant. And finally, I feel like I've just been picking at this kid every day. And finally I stopped myself and I went, "You probably think I don't like you, right?" And the kid looked at me for the first time with honesty in their eyes and went, "Yep." And I went, "Oh, that's too bad. Here's why you think I don't like you." And I kind of tried to turn it into a teachable moment, but it also reminded me of what happens in our brains. So I'll get real scientific with you here. Humans, we are really controlled by a chemical known as dopamine. And I'm sorry, parents, it's the same way. Everybody is the same way. We're all controlled by this chemical known as dopamine. And dopamine enters your brain through a synapse and interacts with your brain, basically gives you a feeling that all is right with the world because of the thing you're doing right now or because of the thing that's happening right now, right? And so as a kid, you probably thought to yourself, my grandma's homemade such and such, something probably just came to your mind, my grandma or mom's homemade such and such, or maybe dad, so I don't want to exclude dads, maybe you're a great baker, I'm a horrible baker, it's like scientific witchcraft. Every time I try and bake something, I go, "Oh, look, it looks so good," right? I made an apple pie last year. Wait, was that 2 years ago? 2 years ago. And didn't ever make one again since then. But it looked so good, and I went, it took me like 4 hours to make, which for someone with ADD, that's a long time to spend doing the same thing, but 4 hours to make that thing, and it wasn't as fun as barbecue, but it turned out looking real good, right? I sit down, I cut me a wedge of that thing with Carrie Ann, I give her the first piece, definitely should have tried it first myself, and it tasted as if someone had taken apple pie filling out of a can and dumped it into an Amazon box. Yep, the apple pie filling, once you got there, was like, "Oh, that's pretty good," but then the cardboard surrounding it, you were going, "Whoa." Never made a pie again, but I was I had this lofty goal in my head, right? Because as a kid, my mom's crusts, I don't know, that lady, her crusts were on point and still are. And she has never burned or destroyed a pie crust in my entire memory of her making pies. And it seriously though, like as I started getting older, and I had her pies maybe 3 or 4 times, or 5 times, or 6 times, or it was somewhere around the 22nd time, because her pies are really good, that I finally went, something's changed. Something's changed. It's not as good anymore, right? And I didn't want to say that to her because that's horrible. You don't want to say that to your mom. But my dad, unfortunately, is a big critic, and I'm not saying anything he doesn't know. He would agree with me. He is a big dessert critic. In fact, I'm afraid of making dessert for the man. He's a big dessert critic. He could be on some website and like going to different restaurants and doing dessert. And he would always say, "Yeah, my mom used to make a great apple pie." And then he would actually be at her house when my grandma was still alive. And she would make the same apple pie. And he would say the same thing too. And I'd say, "Dad, we all have the same opinion about mom's pies." Because he would go, "What, have you changed something? Maybe it was the apples you were using back then. We lived in Southern California. Maybe it was the apples you used that were from Southern California, right?" "No, it's dopamine." we go on dopamine cycles. So here's how dopamine works. When you start doing something new, and maybe it's a thing that you really like, you really hit it off the first time with this thing. Maybe you decided after 14 years of not doing this, you're going to go running, right? And maybe that first run, usually the first run is, like the birds are chirping, and I've been there, the birds are chirping, and the sky is blue, and you're running, and it almost is kind of like a Disney movie, right? When you're going along, and all the animals are singing to you and whatnot, and you're thinking, oh, this is so great. And then the second run you go on hurts horribly the whole time. You ran the same route, you even looked at the same things, you're going, the birds are not chirping anymore, there's a stinking squirrel eyeballing me kind of funny, and this possum, I hate possums. And it just gets worse, right? The same thing happens with other things too. At the beginning of the year, we all said about this class that we now have as 6th graders, we all thought to ourselves, wow, these 6th graders are so much better than the ones that we had last year. They're so polite, and they come up to you and, hey, Mr. Barrett, can I have a pencil, please? They used the word please. And I went, sure, I mean, take 5, you know, and you're so happy about this class. We were so happy. And then upon further analysis, upon, the middle of the year, they start getting a little grouchy. And you start going, what's wrong with you? What happened to that really sweet kid I had a little while ago? And then they start asking that devious question that all kids ask when the teacher goes like, hey, I need you to get back to the place that I asked you to be. That place over there. That, I don't know why you're all of a sudden like over here. You need to be over there. They'll ask you the question, why, Mr. Barrett? And I look at that kid and I'm just like, I'm going to ask you one more time. In my mind, I'm thinking something that you probably can't say at church, like, you know why? Because I'm going to take this pencil in my hand. No. It's now at the end of the year, we're looking backwards and we're thinking to ourselves, what happened to that class? They didn't change. They thought the same thing about us, right? They get there and everything is so great. If you remember back when if you changed schools ever and you got there and it was so cool and the hallways were so big and there's all these bigger kids that you look up to and the locker rooms are so cool and stuff and the bathrooms are even really so cool and then things go along and all of a sudden your brain, because it's not a new novel thing, is not hitting you at the same amount of dopamine. So what's actually happening is nothing changed, and your experience did not change. In fact, your experience probably even got better. You probably got better at turning things in at school. You probably liked your teacher more because you got to know them more, or maybe you hated that one teacher more because you got to know him more. Things actually developed. But what happens is your mind now views this as routine. So it doesn't flood your brain with dopamine anymore. Now, scientists have gone back and forward about why we actually have the dopamine reflex. And what we actually, our best guess, and these are scientists that are non-evolutionists, because, as the evolutionist, you think, oh, because you needed more novel things to do in your life and stuff. Well, I believe in adaptation. I believe that, we're made to adapt, and it's kind of present and stuff. We didn't, in my opinion at least, and from my understanding of scriptures, we did not come from a primordial slime ooze that all of a sudden went, I need to climb out of this hole. That would make me feel really great. So that's of course my belief. But I believe that as an adaptive species, it was in our best interest to explore new things, right? You need new nutrients. Why are you eating the same stinking food over and over and over again? You need new nutrients. Ooh, that fruit tastes really good. Well, it was probably really good for you. And so we kind of just go that way. And we need to understand that about ourselves because in James today, we're in 2nd James, James is talking about the fact that we do this thing called favoritism and God does not. He doesn't have dopamine running through his brain because he doesn't have a brain. He's an interdimensional being that sees all of time and space together and created it all himself. He does not have dopamine running through his veins at all. In fact, it probably looks a little silly to him that we do these things. But here we go. So we're in 2nd James today. 2nd James, starting with verse 1. And now in my Bible, at least, this has the caption, favoritism forbidden. My brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious God, Jesus Christ, must not show favoritism. And he in verse 2, he goes and kind of gives you a picture of what this looks like. Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also comes If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, here's a good seat for you, but say to the poor man, you stand there, or sit on the floor by my feet, have you not discriminated amongst yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? Listen, my dear brothers and sisters, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith, to inherit the kingdom he promised to those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor. Is it not the rich who are exploiting you? Are they not the ones who are dragging you into the court? Are they not the ones who are blaspheming the noble name of him to whom you belong? And you might think to yourself, as I stop there, you might think to yourself, we wouldn't do that in church today. I mean, that's not socially acceptable, right? This is 2019. If someone were to come in and you did not agree with them personally, or how they looked or something, or, that giant face tattoo that I keep wanting to get that my wife tells me not to get, and that kind of thing. Like, if I came in with a giant face tattoo on my head, you probably would give me another look, but you'd say, we love Geoff the way he is, and this is just the way he is, He needs Jesus, right? Everybody needs Jesus, and you'd probably accept me eventually. I might get a little... But you would most likely accept me. I believe this about this church. You've already accepted quite a lot already. So let's be honest here. So we might say to ourselves, yes, 2019, we don't do that kind of thing anymore. Well, I've seen it in the church, and not necessarily this church, but it actually happens in different ways now. It happens in the way of talents and gifts. Let me explain to you. So, as someone that plays on worship teams, something that happens is there's occasionally people that come into your midst that are better musicians. They're just more accomplished musicians, whether it's more of the magical gift that God gives you, or whether it's just someone that's more practiced, has had more experience, that kind of thing. It happens. It happens from time to time. And me being actually, in my opinion, a very kind of average musician, doesn't happen to me a lot, but it happens to people that come into the church. So this is how it'll happen. So a guy will come into the church, and he will be an incredible lyricist, songwriter, or maybe he's even recorded or something. I played with those kind of people. They're amazing to play with, let me tell you. And they can play every instrument, and this happened to me a little while ago. It was a guy that was sitting behind me on the drum kit. And man, that guy, I have very rarely come across a drummer that, sorry, any of you that are drummers, but that listens to the rest of the band. And so he's listening to the rest of the band. He's keeping a great amount of time. His dynamics are great with every song and stuff. It's really fun to play with him because you can really get into the groove with him and that kind of stuff. But all of a sudden, it became apparent as Sundays turned into months, turned into about half a year or so, that this guy was on the schedule a lot. And he began to take the place of some other people that really wanted to play. And so then the question becomes, are we worshiping anymore, or has this now become a show where we're just trying to look good, right? Now, I didn't want to, of course, judge the church that was doing this, but I kind of went to the worship leader because I knew him, and I said, hey man, so are we going to give such and such a shot, and that kind of thing? And he actually had to go and check himself and go, yeah, I guess so. I guess you're right. So it does happen, and it can happen in churches, and it's kind of unfortunate when it does happen because, in the way of talents at least, it was taking the place of a couple people that wanted to be a part of a worship team. And worship teams are not supposed to be, I believe, in my opinion, a giant show with exceptional musicians doing things exactly the right way and stuff. That's not what worship is about. King David, in fact, went on to the beach just about half naked, like dancing and yelling and thanking God that the Ark of the Covenant had come into his town. So worship is different things to different people, and it shouldn't be perfect. But that's one way it could happen. Now, James always has two themes. I love that James has two themes because being an ADD person, I love when it changes gears. So I'm going to change gears. I'm going to jump all the way to verse 14 with faith and deeds. So we're on 2 James, verse 14. Sorry, 2 James. Did I say that before? 1 James? James 2, verse 14. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save him? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself is not accompanied by if it is not accompanied by action, it is dead. But someone will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. You foolish person. Do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless? Was not our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see by his faith, and change my page. There we go. You see by his faith then, and this is why, so the Bible app reads to you in this really soothing voice. I'm sorry that I'm not doing that right now. And his actions were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. And the scripture was fulfilled and says, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. And he was called God's friend. You see that a person is considered righteous by what they do, and not by faith alone. So, basically, show me, don't just say you believe. Now, you might think to yourself, we also don't do that today. So, before I have this story for you, I kind of wanted to acknowledge some main things, because I went over a lot of stuff here. So, what James is saying is, number one, demons acknowledge God. Demons, I would even go so far to say, have a faith in God. Let me explain. Don't throw things at me yet. So, when I say I have faith in something, I have faith that it is there and will do what it's supposed to do, right? I had faith that today we got into the car because I had faith that, first of all, the car would move forward when I turned it on, because I believe that I've done all the necessary maintenance and the car is going to turn on. That makes sense, right? I had faith that the car would move forward. Okay. It's not that I believe the car and deify the car. That's not exactly what that means. It just means I have faith that the car works. Now, I also have faith that this floor will not collapse beneath me in the next 5 seconds. If I didn't have that kind of faith, I wouldn't be standing here today. I have faith that my Achilles tendons, which actually one of them's a little bit sore, so I might be a little suspect there. I have faith that my Achilles tendons are going to keep my body rigid and straight as my legs hold me upright. If I didn't have that kind of faith, I wouldn't be, again, standing here. That's faith. That's what faith is. Belief that something will do what it says it's going to do. Faith is one part of a relationship with God. If you just have faith that God is, see what I said there? If you just have faith that God is, then you believe the same thing that demons do. Demons have faith that God is. In fact, it scares the bejesus out of them. It scares them so much because they know that they have lost already and they're on the losing side. And their goal now is to take as many people as they possibly can and cause as much conflict in the church as they possibly can. In fact, it was said to me before by a church planter who works for NWCEA, Northwest Christian Evangelical Association. They plant churches in the Portland metro area. He said to me one time when he was discipling me, Geoff, the devil and his demons do not have to destroy the church. That is not necessarily their goal. They don't have to do that. What they have to do is simply unplug the church. If the church has got amplification, something with amplification can be heard throughout everywhere, right? But if a church is constantly bickering and picking at each other and doing the things that James is talking about today and not using their deeds, but simply saying, we have faith, and not moving with it, that church is now unplugged and will not do anything else. The fact that this church does VBS is an amazingly good sign. This church is plugged in and doing what God needs it to do in order to reach a broader community. But a church that hunkers down and kind of is still bickering amongst itself, that kind of says we need to get ourselves in order first, and just uses that opportunity to fight amongst each other and talk about each other and form factions and that kind of thing. That church is still a church. Those people are still believers, but that church is now unplugged and cannot be used. And demons get to do that. That's what their goal is. They have faith that God exists. In fact, they have terrifying faith that God exists. And their goal is to not let that spread amongst the earth. That is the goal of demons. So, how do we elevate ourselves amongst, beyond that? Well, what James is talking about is first and foremost, in the last section, we we value everybody the same way, right? Everybody has different gifts. Everybody has different talents. Everybody comes into the church able to do what they're able to do. And we need to glorify that, right? Moms have a tremendous gift of patience. And I've actually seen firsthand patience not only with Jack, but with me too. Because when my patience runs out, Carrie Ann's patience had better not run out. And so it's amazing to me to see that lady's patience. Like yesterday, I was actually home alone with Jack as she went and did some stuff. And Jack usually eats with me just fine. We have bottles, and I can give him a bottle and that kind of stuff. Jack just got his shots, though. So that was kind of hard to watch, the first shots. You all that have kids have known this. I didn't realize how I would react. They stuck a needle in him. Man, but like, she came and she had like 4 of those things. And I was thinking, I don't know if his legs have that much skin on them. Like, do you have room to stick? Man, I was just like, whoa. And I kind of was just smiling at Jack like, it's going to be fine. This is fun. And he gave me this biggest look of betrayal that I've ever seen. Boom. And he just went, Dad? Fun? This is not fun, right? And Carrie Ann's patience just extended throughout that entire day. I tried to take her to dinner right after that. Horrible idea. And Jack was not having it because someone just stuck railroad spikes in his leg. And so he was fussy, he was fighting it and everything, and I was just thinking, I'm so sorry, I just wish this child would go to sleep. And she was going, this is the greatest day ever. I'm just so glad you're doing this. And I was thinking, how are you so glad? I'm so nervous. And people are looking at me in the restaurant like, and everything. And I was thinking, I'm sorry, railroad spikes, I don't know this. And Carrie Ann's just sitting there like, I love being a mom. Isn't this the greatest thing ever? And like Jack wouldn't eat with me yesterday. Man, I was fit to be tied. He was fussing the whole time. And finally, he decided that his stomach was really empty. He barely ate anything. I gave him some Tylenol because he was in super amounts of pain. I couldn't even bump his leg. She got home, and I was the definition of frazzled. I must have, if I had more hair, it would have been just sticking out of my head. I must have had this wild look in my eyes, like, you know, if you come back and the civilization, you like left them on a deserted island or something, and they're all wearing loincloths and hunting with spears. That's probably what I look like, right? It's been so long, where have you been, right? And she just went, are you okay? And I went, yeah, fine. Jack is asleep. Must have been drooling or something, or I didn't look good. But she was so happy to be home, and everything was great, and she was happy, and moms have so much stinking patience, and it's so great that we have you in the church. We need to use those gifts like James is talking about, and let those be the good deeds of the church, right? I'll leave you with one more thing. So as it goes along, James is talking about the Good Samaritan. And he goes and he references, James is the brother of Jesus, right? So he's referencing a lot of the things Jesus talked about. And so Jesus tells this story in Luke 10:25 through 37. If you want to go there, you can. Right now, I'm going to go there here. Luke 10 starts at verse 25. And this kind of references the works versus deeds thing, the faith versus deeds thing, right? To have faith in something and believe it will do what it says it's going to do is one step of the Christian experience. The other step, of course, is the relationship with Christ. And if you've got a relationship with Christ, and if He is pouring into your life, you might notice that your relationship with Him doesn't ebb and flow. I mean, it has certain ups and downs because of us, because we're driven by dopamine, like I was talking about, but Christ doesn't change. So if you are truly plugged in, you know that your relationship with God just continues to expand. It continues to get more mature. It continues, your talks with Him should begin to mature in a way that He's actually telling you things that you need to do if you're plugged into Him daily. I mean, I'm even getting excited for VBS, not because I personally am excited for VBS, but I believe that the Spirit of God is going to move, and the Spirit is making me excited. It's a great thing. It's a great time. And what James is saying is that your deeds should proceed out of that. Because I stop and help an old lady on the side of the road fix and put the spare tire on her car, that does not make me a Christian. In fact, deeds don't make you a Christian at all. But I was talking last week, we're a tree, right? We're referenced as a plant so many times in the Bible. I think it's kind of funny that God thinks of us as like plants, sheep, just these things that are inanimate, right? That's kind of what we must seem like sometimes. But if a tree does not bear fruit, there's something wrong with the tree. The fact that a tree does not bear fruit, I mean, you wouldn't, if you saw your tree and you suspected there's some rock kind of in the middle, right, with an apple tree, you wouldn't take one of the fruits, right? And there's nothing that says take a fruit and smear it all over the tree. That'll fix your tree, right? The same is true for us. You can't just pile on good deeds and hope that's going to save you. But it should be a manifestation of your relationship with Christ. That doesn't change. So, this is the parable of the Good Samaritan. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said. He probably used that cynically, by the way. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road." Now, he does this on purpose. If you ever analyze this story, I love this story because Jesus is going through all of the people they view as up here, right? This person is so enthralled and in love with God and keeps all these commands that there's no way he is going to not help this person, right? So here we go. He says, a priest, verse 31, happened to be going down the same road. And when he saw the man, and he probably looked at the guy that he was talking to when he did this, he saw the man, he passed on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place where he saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. Now, the person he was talking to, they did not like Samaritans. Samaritans are unclean, so he would have been like, "How could you," right? He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." Let's pray. Dear Jesus, I thank you for the example of motherhood, that it's not something that ebbs and flows, that mothers love us no matter what we do, no matter the things that cross our minds, no matter the things that we do against them. And we thank you for that example, and that you are the